ever since I met you at the shop, like cutting your hair and stuff, I think understanding the way that you look at property in New Zealand influenced me in a massive way. But ever since I was young, I never really looked at like $1 million house in Auckland and thought, man, $1 million, that's so worth that. What are your thoughts on like the future of that in New Zealand? Do you think we're just getting started, or
in like the long-term future of real estate in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't presume to have an opinion.
Yeah.
I just don't think that it's going to be anywhere near as like explosive or prosperous as other places that you could put your money.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on New Zealand. It's a knock on real estate as an asset class.
Yeah. In terms of like asset performance, I think that's something that I was introduced to through yourself. And like growing up in New Zealand, houses are kind of like the only thing that anyone's thinking about in terms of making a serious transaction, at least at like a high school level. You don't hear anyone about like talking about like cracking it in business or like anything like that. And if you do, I don't know. I didn't, but like it would just seem so outside the ordinary. It would be like a shock and you'd be like inclined not to trust it. What are your thoughts on like asset performance, focus investing in stocks compared to a house? Because like a house, like in a bull market, you're probably like cutting it close to what like a high performing stock would, right? Or like how does that work? Like which performs better and like when?
So, well, I mean, if you're doing a poor job of picking stocks, you'd be much better off putting your money in cash, real estate, and some kind of diversified thing. But if you're doing a good job, and if you are able to predictably do a good job, it begs the question of why you would be doing anything else other than the bare minimum of keeping yourself safe and stable. Again, and that is heavily debatable and subject to change based on your needs and wants and the people that depend on you and so on. But I mean, essentially, you're not going to find like a real estate investment is what? It is a piece of land, a constructed home, and then a neighborhood and like the perception of the future of the value of that neighborhood. That is never going to grow and transform at the same rate in reality and then consequently in perception as like the best businesses and services in the world that can grow at a global scale in ways that we can't even, that like literally will blow our minds as the years go by about how they're changing things in the world. It's just, those are incomparable things. I think the only exception would be if you had access to like oligarchic levels of money and political connections that you could start sort of like buying entire neighborhoods and then popularizing the neighborhood. That, you know, as was done in pockets of Brooklyn, New York, let's say, over the last like 15, 20 years. Unless you're doing that, it's completely incomparable because that's, I guess what I'm getting at is like, if you're not investing in a tectonic transformation, then why would there be a big financial shift? You're just kind of investing in an incremental shift. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of like the Brooklyn example, right? Like Brooklyn used to be the hood. Has it like just fully become gentrified? Like, is that kind of like the situation over there, or? I
mean, for context, actually, I'm wearing white shorts now too. What do you know? I remember I was walking through. It's like, have you ever heard of Harlem?
Yeah.
So Harlem at a certain point became rebranded as Central Park North, and like Bushwick started getting rebranded as East Williamsburg, and all of a sudden Williamsburg, which at one time was in like the 70s or 80s maybe, like was the hood. It was a very dangerous place to be, becomes more posh than Manhattan. It's like, oh, you can go work in the city after this like quaint, beautiful little like train ride in, like completely shift it. And so I call it Manhattan Fest Destiny for any Manifest Destiny nerds out there. But in essence, yes. And I remember I participated in this to a degree where I got an apartment in East Williamsburg, which used to be Bushwick. And I was walking from my apartment to the train to go into the city. And I remember this guy yelled from his porch. He's like, "My rent is fucked." Like, and I look down at myself in my white shorts and I'm like, sorry, man. Like, I don't know how to I don't know how to help you out with this. And that was 10, 15 years ago. And so it would be much more dramatic now. And, yeah, that's how things go sometimes. But even that I'm not a real estate expert, but the real money would have been made in initially architecting that versus participating in it once it became obvious enough to somebody like me who notices it just walking down the street. If you had anticipated it and then, importantly, which is why I use the word oligarchic, like funded it politically, financially, and galvanized it, that, in my opinion, is like the only way that you would find an investment return that was tantamount to investing, let's say, in like Amazon, when people were saying that it was a hypothetical and it probably wasn't going to work out, and that the internet itself was probably a fad. And even then Amazon would have blown that investment out of the water, which is, I think, one of the beautiful democratizing elements of being able to invest, where if you back something that you see is going to flourish, you can put your money in a place where it would be very difficult to find better odds.
Mm.